Sponsored by the McCaffrey Health Center. Every year, an estimated 5 million people die from a stroke, but as much as 80% of strokes are preventable by changing certain behaviors. Here now to discuss it is Dr. Sean McCaffrey with the McCaffrey Health Center. Doc, welcome back.
Great, good morning.
Okay, so how much does our family history play a role when it comes to having a stroke?
You know, a little bit. Your genetics and things and your DNA and all that, it's really kind of like a library book.
Okay.
You have this sitting on your shelf, and if you pull that off your shelf and you start reading through it and you start cooking the recipe, you can get a stroke out of it from a DNA standpoint.
Okay.
But really, it's not as prevalent as your lifestyle, your environment, your diet, things like that have a much, much greater impact on whether you're going to have a stroke or not.
Yeah, because I would imagine that most people think it's the other way around,
Yep.
that it's more of a family history or genetics or something like that. So how important is exercise and keeping us healthy and actually helping to lower that risk for a stroke?
You know, it's really important because things like blood pressure, your overall fitness, your overall health play a major role on stroke incidence and reoccurrence of stroke and the other secondary conditions that kind of feed into it. So you want to stay active, you want to stay mobile the best you can, and it's really one of the better things you can do to help prevent it.
Okay, so what about diet? Okay, you know, exercise and diet go hand in hand in helping to keep us healthy. So how important is what we put in our bodies, effective in keeping us from having a stroke?
Yeah, it's the number one thing you can
Yeah,
do. You
really?
know,
Okay,
it is hands down the number one thing you can do. And what you're looking at is here, a couple things happen with diet, right? We eat food and we think about it, well, it's fuel for the body, and that's about all we ever think about. But we don't ever think about, hey, it could hurt me. And so if we eat a lot of foods that are inflammatory, a lot of foods that are aggravating to your arteries, that are aggravating to your tissues, that's what eventually over time leads to stroke formation. And that's where we get in trouble. So diet is critical. You know, not overeating, controlling your portions, eating fresh, real food versus processed foods can have a huge impact on your likelihood of developing a stroke.
Okay, do we have to be a vegetarian or a vegan though?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. You don't at all. You know, and really, when you're looking at stroke risk, the high protein diets and things, the high quality fat diets actually do every bit as well as anybody else as far as developing a stroke.
Okay.
So when you look at it, you think, okay, gosh, I can eat meat, I can eat fish and chicken, I can have good quality fats, things you get from avocados and such like that, and really do a very, very nice job of preventing a stroke.
Okay, so let's talk about specifics. Which, fruits or vegetables are really, really good for us in helping to protect us?
You know, the biggest thing is anything that's anti-inflammatory. So you're looking at high vitamin C foods because your artery walls are lined with muscle, and that muscle becomes brittle over time when it gets inflamed. That's what tears, or eventually you get clots that form. And there's two types of strokes, right? There's the ischemic and the hemorrhagic that are the kind of the main groups, and they break into subcategories. So you're looking at thinking, well, I got to control inflammation. That's my main goal. So you want to focus on berries. You want to focus on things that are high in vitamin C, your citrus fruits, things of that nature. And then your leafy greens help to control the blood flow itself. They thin the blood out, so broccoli and all of your cruciferous vegetables, those are really, really good for you. So there's lots of good things in that food world.
Yeah, but they don't taste very good. I mean, I guess it just depends on how you prepare them. But I mean, who wants to eat a bunch of vegetables when you're dumping ranch and everything on there?
Right, and that makes
that
it more
negates
challenging,
the
right?
whole,
Absolutely, absolutely
benefit.
does, yeah.
Yeah, so of course the farmers market starts today. We wanted to just point that out so you can get those fresh fruits and vegetables. What are some of the warning signs of a stroke? I guess the acronym for it is FAST?
Yeah, it's always FAST. So you're looking at, the facial drooping is what you're looking at, or any kind of facial involvement. You start looking at arm involvement. It will usually be one side only, not both. When you start going through the slurred speech, and that's a big one. You'll start noticing they're having a hard time getting their words out, or their words are backwards, or they're not being able to put them together. And the T in FAST is just really call for help, because the quicker you respond to stroke symptoms, the better the outcome will be. If you wait too long, you can get into trouble with it.
So, I guess a common misconception is that strokes only happen to older people. Of course, my dad was older when he had a stroke, but is that's kind of a myth, isn't it?
It is a little bit of a myth,
Yeah.
and the thing with time that you get in trouble with is the longer you've had time on the planet, the more likely you've done damage to yourself.
Sure.
So when we're looking at environmental things and dietary things and such, time really, really takes its toll. Now, when you get into genetics, now it doesn't matter as much. Now, all right, you can be 15 and have a problem occur. The biggest key with all of this, I did a talk years ago at a stroke support group, and I went around the room, and there were about 30 people there. I went around the room and I said, how many of you in here are diabetic? 29 of the 30 stroke survivors were diabetic.
Wow.
And they were diabetic before they had their stroke. So we go back now and we say, well, gosh, diabetes, oh, that's diet induced. It's environment induced. it's preventable.
Okay.
So that tells me that, gosh, guys, you can prevent this. And that's what's nice about strokes. Over 80% of all the stroke risk factors are preventable.
Great advice. Get those fruits and vegetables and
Absolutely.
exercise, right? Well, the McCaffrey Health Center, they are running a $99 new patient consultation now until the end of the month. To learn more, you can visit their website, which is McCaffreyhealth.com. Doc, thanks for being
Great,
here. We'll see you
thank
again
you.
next Wednesday.